All right. Well, I think I'm going to begin to get started. We'll continue to let folks in, but we have a full Zoom screen here, which is awesome. Happy New Year, all, and thanks for joining us for our first climate action call of the year, which is also going to be a bit of a training on how to engage effectively at the State House. I think this is really NRCM's bread and butter. We're located right next to the State House. We have a bunch of experienced lobbyists on our team, and we're over there in the halls. At least a couple staffers are over there in the halls talking directly to legislators every day. So we're excited to give you some insights about that process in particular, with a real focus on how you can join us. If you're not familiar with our Climate Action Call series, we have on the first Thursday of every month an opportunity for you to join us. Usually you're joining the Jack and Josh show. Today it's going to be the Jack and Branya show, which is slightly less alliterative, but just as dynamic. And as with all of our climate action calls, we do want these calls to be really discussion oriented. A lot of folks on this call know each other via this call, and so feel free to chime in the chat or raise your hand to ask questions. We will have a dedicated Q&A section at the end of the call. The way we typically do this is I will share my screen, we'll go through some slides, and then we'll have an opportunity for some Q&A after the call. I did want to start, though, by passing it over to Stephen quickly, and thank you, Stephen, for being on. Stephen just participated in local climate action in a way that we talk about quite often, and I think is illustrative of the way that you and your own community can advance the clean energy transition. And so I wonder, Stephen, if you could just give us an insight into what motivated you to go to a town meeting in your town that ultimately helped to facilitate the clean energy transition in West Bath.
Sure. Yeah. I started with a call from Josh a few weeks ago and letting me know that there was going to be a meeting, town meeting for a special town meeting. There's a solar array being installed in town, and it's actually been in the planning process for a couple of years, but they recently discovered that there was a really tiny sliver of town property that they needed a variance for to provide access road to the construction. So it turned out I was already going to that meeting. I had heard about it, and it was great because Josh also connected me with a person who was was going to be at that meeting and was kind of representing the company doing the construction. And that was helpful because I got a little more background on it. Turns out there's a lot of benefits to the town that I didn't know about. Um, I agreed to go to the meeting, which was simple because I was going. And I also reached out to some neighbors because I thought they may also be interested. A couple of my neighbors also have solar panels on their house. So headed over to the meeting. There ended up being about four of us there, and we kind of packed the house because there's not that many people at these meetings. We're a small town, and it went really well. It was great to hear details about it. There were a couple of good questions by other folks, other residents of the town, about, for example, how the installation is going to be sunsetted when it comes to end of life, which I hadn't even thought about. It was a good discussion, and we ended up voting to have the selectmen go ahead and make that variance happen. So it was gratifying to go and see how it works, and I was really glad that Josh kind of reached out to me to kind of help me through that. So that was good.
Thanks, Stephen. I appreciate you sharing. I think it's just really demonstrative of the impact that you can have at the local level. We influence elected officials at every level, from federal on down to our local elected officials. And I like to think about it generally like the federal level is good for mobilizing large amounts of money for some of the big projects that we want to do as a state. The state level is good for establishing statewide regulation and trying to ensure that we have a level set for how we approach environmental protection. But it's really the local level municipalities that are actually controlling the land use decisions in your local community. And it's also true that when you show up at the local level, you are disproportionately more impactful because, as you said, Stephen, you and your four friends really packed the room for that West Bath town meeting. So thank you for sharing that. And I just wanted to kick us off with some good news about local climate action. So with that, it looks like we have a pretty healthy attendance here. So I am going to kick us off and share my screen. We have some slides that will help us to um, let you know how you can make change happen at the State House with all of us. Can I get a thumbs up just to make sure that this is sharing and that folks are seeing the right thing? Great, thank you so much. Um, so as I mentioned, if you're familiar with our climate action calls, and if you've joined us before, you're probably familiar with these faces. I'm Josh, and I work as our clean energy policy advocate and outreach manager. Jack is my boss, and he's our clean energy director and is often the expert on these calls, talking about the clean energy transition and helps to kind of give you a little peek under the hood in terms of what we're working on. And then Rebecca is really quite a whiz when it comes to the Public Utilities Commission and working on our grid. The face that you might not yet be so familiar with is this one. So Branya, I wanted to hand it over to you to introduce yourself to this crowd.
Yeah, hi everyone. I am Branya Lechtman, and I'm the Grassroots Outreach Manager with NRCM. So I work kind of across our issues on building people power, making sure we have folks turn up at hearings or at decision-making junctures, and we'll talk more about that soon.
And Branya is really all over the state, just constantly zooming around to go meet people in their local communities and talk about the issues that they're most concerned about. So in addition to mobilizing people and getting people to come out to the State House, Branya is just really a huge value add in terms of our ability to connect with the whole state of Maine and figure out what communities care about and want us to advance. So climate action calls, as I mentioned, these are monthly calls. We hope you'll tune in and join us every month. They give you a peek under the hood into what we're working on. We start with a presentation. We then tell you how you can engage and take action. And we finish with a call to action. We also finish with a Q&A. We really want this to be discussion oriented, so we won't take the full time on this presentation here, but feel free to think about some of the questions you might have and ask them of us at the end. So we're doing a pretty bang up job of introductions, I think. Our next step is to do an overview of the current legislative session that just kicked off again this week. We'll then go into the legislative process, how bills become law and how you can influence them, and then really talk about the junctures that you can make your voice heard and how we can facilitate helping that to happen. We'll finish with a call to action and then go into our question and answer. I do want to note here that we work on a lot of issues across the board at the Natural Resources Council of Maine. And today, rather than focusing on all of those issues and going in depth, we're going to really focus on the how you can engage to advance the issues that you care about. I do want to note as well that at the end of January, NRCM is going to be hosting a webinar that is focused on our top priority issues for this session. So while Branya and I will go a little bit into some of those issues that we're focusing on, today is really more about the how. And if you want to join us in a couple of weeks to learn about the what, we'd love to have you there. And I'll be sure to include the link to that webinar in our follow-up. This is a really great picture of some students that joined us at our State House Action Day last year. One of the really great things about the Maine State House that I just always like to emphasize is that it's really accessible, right? If you come to Augusta, you can walk on in and you can talk to your legislators in the halls of the State House. Anybody can do this. You don't need credential. You don't need a press pass. It's really phenomenal as an opportunity. If you're going to be in the State House more than 8 hours per month, you'll need to be a registered lobbyist. But otherwise, it's a really accessible scene. This is a little bit of a breakdown of the 132nd Maine Legislature. I'll talk about this a little bit more, but we are currently in the second session of what are 2-year sessions for the Maine Legislature. So all of the elected officials that we are working with have been working together for over a year now on legislation. The long session, which kicks off the first year after elected officials are elected, typically goes from January through June, and is really where most of the public hearings, a lot of the action is happening. The second half of the session that we're currently embarking on is really about taking care of the carryover bills that have been moved on from last session to this one. I wanted to show this map because to really emphasize that we are in a really tight partisan situation at the State House at the moment, and you can see that partisan divide is also relatively geographic throughout the state of Maine. There aren't a lot of votes in the Maine House in particular to swing in either direction. So let's say 2 Democrats choose not to support something. That's enough to have a bill not pass. So I wanted to provide this context because I think it's been really defining of our time so far, and I think will continue to be so throughout the rest of the short session. This is the final session under Governor Janet Mills. There will be an election this November. Every 2 years, all of the state senators and all of the House members are also elected. So in addition to having a new governor next year, we're also going to have a new full House and Senate. So that's really determinative. It is true that legislators during the second year of a session are always interested in getting back onto the campaign trail. So that's why the short session is from January to April. As I mentioned before, there aren't a lot of new bills. So we mostly know the bills that we're working on because they've been carried over from last session. They just didn't have a vote last session. What that also means is that in the steps of the legislative process, which we'll review shortly, a lot of the bills have already had a public hearing, which is really your big opportunity to stand in front of a committee and share why you want a certain bill to pass. What that means is that now the best way to engage is largely to come to the State House and speak to legislators directly as they're anticipating voting for these bills on the House and Senate floor. That isn't to say that there aren't any more public hearings, but they are looking to get through all public hearings for carryover bills by the end of January. So if there are still bills, and we'll go through a couple of them that have public hearings remaining, you'll want to make sure to join us in January to do so, because after that it will be mostly lobbying. Kind of overarching context, as folks likely know, the federal environment right now is not great from a state funding perspective, particularly for environmental protection. There have been a lot of cuts at the federal level that impact state budgets. And so I think a big part of this last year of the 132nd legislature is going to be trying to fill some of the gaps from those federal cuts. And then, as I mentioned, positioning for upcoming elections. Unfortunately, it does also tend to be the case in the second year of a session as we get closer to elections. The legislators are a lot more sensitive about how certain votes are going to impact their election potential. So they're going to be thinking about their electability when they're taking these votes. So it's all the more important because of that people show up. The last thing that I'll just say in this regard is that the short session is generally packed with all the bills that couldn't get decided on last year. And a lot of those, therefore, are some of the stickier, harder to decide bills, which again, just lends all the more reason for you and for all of our members to come out and make your voice heard for legislators. This is not an exhaustive list of NRCM's legislative priorities. We, every single session, are tracking over 100 bills and testifying. We actually testified on over 100 bills this session, which is a record for us, which is pretty remarkable. But here are a few that are rising to the top for each of our issue areas. Folks that have tuned into previous climate action calls are probably familiar with the Climate Superfund Bill, LD 1870. This is a bill around making polluters pay. And the concept basically is Maine has seen a lot of climate damage, and we need a lot of money to recover from, say, the storms that we saw in 2023 and 2024. Right now, most of that money is coming from the pockets of taxpayers. But we know that climate change is caused disproportionately by certain corporations. And thanks to certain science that has evolved recently around carbon accounting, we can get really specific about which corporations are most responsible for climate change. Think of Exxon, think of Shell, some of these top 100 most polluting corporations in the world. The concept here is that we can actually determine of those businesses that do business in Maine, what businesses are most responsible for climate change, and then we can assess penalties for the damage that they've caused to the state so that the polluters themselves are actually the people paying for the damages. This is based on the Superfund concept that you might be familiar with from the 1980s, where this was more focused on chemical waste. But the polluters that were responsible for that chemical waste also had to pay in to remediate that waste. So this is the same concept, but applied to Climate Superfund. I'll bet you that you're also familiar with tribal sovereignty if you tuned into any of NRCM's legislative work over the past few years. It has been true for the past several sessions that the Wabanaki nations in Maine have been advocating for tribal sovereignty. They've built a really incredible coalition through the Wabanaki Alliance, of which NRCM is a proud member. And basically, there are a set of recommendations that have emerged around establishing tribal sovereignty for the Wabanaki nations in Maine, of which there are 4 federally recognized tribes. Those 4 tribes are the only tribes in the entire nation 574 total that are not deemed sovereign. They're not treated as sovereign nations, and instead are treated more like municipalities in Maine and are restricted in terms of their ability to manage their own land, and both in terms of traditional and sustenance practices. So this is one of those bills that has not yet had a hearing, but will likely have a hearing by the end of January, and you will be hearing from us about when that hearing is, so that you can come and make your voice heard if you'd like to. I'll pass it over to Branya for the next two here.
Yeah, so the next one that will be a priority this legislative session is going to be Land for Maine's Future. So Land for Maine's Future is Maine's most successful and popular land conservation program. It's administered by the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. It conserves land for outdoor recreation, farming, working waterfronts, protecting water access. So it covers a wide variety of needs. And it's protected land and from across all 16 counties and has funded over 300 projects throughout the state. So it's been a really, really big deal, especially in a state like Maine, where 90% of our land is publicly owned, or sorry, it's privately owned. So it's really important to have funding for making sure that land can be publicly available. So it's been a great program, but the funding is almost out. And so it's really important that we refill that pot of money so that more land can be conserved. It's important, especially right now, as we're seeing increased development and growth in Maine. And then also conserving more land is a really important part of our climate action plan as a state. The next bill that we'll talk about is around battery stewardship. So the LD number is still being fleshed out, but some of you might remember that NRCM played a big role in getting a stewardship program for packaging passed. So it's basically to ensure that there are incentives and structure for recycling and managing that waste product. And so right now there's not a stewardship program for batteries. And this has risen to a big point of concern because of hazardous waste possibilities and also for fire risks. So this session, there are going to be efforts to get a battery stewardship program going. And we anticipate there being a public hearing for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Branya. And again, this is just a tidbit of the things that we're focusing on, some examples of how across all of our departments, of which we have our climate focus, we have our woods, waters, and wildlife focus, and we have our sustainability focus. There are a lot of bills that we're focused on. And I want to note here too, that if there are bills that you don't see us actively working on that matter to you, we can still help you and facilitate your process in getting to the State House. And it's likely the case that we're already tracking some of those, but might just not be talking about them at the priority level that we're talking about some of these bills. So I went through a little bit of this, but I wanted to put it up on the screen as well. This works on a 2-year schedule. Lawmakers are elected in November, which happened a year and a half ago now. And then the first legislative session goes from January to June. All of the bill ideas have to be submitted in that from November to December, the first year that legislators are elected. So it's a bit of a scramble to get all these bill titles in. And typically we see over 2,000 bills that all have to be individually processed by committees. Each of those bills receive an LD number and then have to be assigned to one of 19 committees. All the bills then have to move through those committees, and they emerge from the committees either with an ought not to pass recommendation or an ought to pass recommendation, at which point they bounce back and forth between the House and the Senate before moving on to the governor's desk. This diagram shows a little bit more closely how you can weigh in. When the lawmaker is elected, we do encourage folks to reach out and introduce yourself. Again, that already happened, but will happen again in November. It is not too late to reach out to your legislator. And I'd like to just note here that legislators aren't hearing as much from their constituents as you might think. We often hear that if someone hears about something 2 to 3 times, it's on their radar. If it's more than 5 times, it's beginning to be a focus. And if you can reach out to if more than 10 people from a given community reach out to a legislator about an issue, it becomes a priority for them. And that's true of a small state like Maine. We mentioned as well that showing up to a public hearing is one of the best ways to actually make your voice heard. NRCM does have a public testimony guidebook, and we'll share that with you a little bit later. Now, as of the pandemic, you can testify virtually or in person. You can also submit written testimony. So there are a lot of ways to make your voice heard at the public hearing. And then basically every committee will have a public hearing for a bill, and then we'll have a work session. The work session is when they take any feedback they got from the public hearing, and then ultimately make any amendments and then vote on the bill. And again, that bill will emerge with a ought to pass or ought not to pass. So that's an opportunity when there's a work session scheduled for a bill, of which there are many happening right now, where you can reach out to the committee members on that particular committee and encourage them to vote ought to pass or ought not to pass. It's kind of the first opportunity that legislators get to vote on a bill. After that, though, it will emerge and then be scheduled for votes on the House and Senate floor. It'll start in whichever chamber the sponsor of the bill resides in. So if a representative sponsors the bill, it will start there. If a senator sponsors the bill, it will start there. It then has to be voted and passed in the House or Senate, and then passed by the other chamber. And then it has to be passed yet again to be finally enacted before moving on to the governor's desk. And that's the last juncture we have here. The governor is also, of course, a major component of this and can choose to veto a bill. You can do a veto override with over 2/3 of the House and Senate voting to override a bill. But typically, that's a challenging bar to reach, especially with the partisanship we're currently seeing. I wanted to add one little thing into this, which is that if a bill needs funding, it goes to what's called the appropriations table. And then the appropriations committee is a really important final juncture before the bill ultimately gets passed. There's only so much money to go around, and there's always a lot more asks for funding than there is funding available. So if a bill doesn't get funding at the appropriations table, it won't pass into law and won't emerge to the governor's desk. So if you know of a bill, or if we are tracking a bill that needs to go to the appropriations table, there is an additional opportunity to reach out to the appropriations committee. One thing that I think is often overlooked is that once a bill passes, it is still a really good idea to reach out to your representative and either thank them for voting in the right direction, or to say, I really wish you had voted the other direction, and to express why you believe that your legislator should have voted in the other direction. We kind of call this accountability, and you can do positive or negative accountability, but it's still a good juncture to reach out to a legislator. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Branya on how we actually get in touch with these legislators.
Yeah, so we're going to go through a few of the different methods for getting a hold of your legislators. But before doing that, I want to make sure that everyone knows, if you don't know who your legislator is, we have an easy way for you to find out. So on our website, we have a legislator lookup page. So Josh, if you could click on that.
This is our biggest tech moment here.
Yes.
Okay, success.
All right, so all you need to do, put in your street address. So we'll put in our office address, find your officials. And then, so the reason why I wanted to go over this with you is because this shows you all of your officials. And so first you'll see federal, then just keep scrolling down so that you can go to where it says Maine, and you're going to see like the governor, secretary of state. But at the bottom of that main section, you're going to see your representative and senator. So here we have Senator Bradstreet and then Representative Rollins. So just want to make sure everyone knew that this is a resource.
Yeah,
all right.
And all emails and phone numbers are publicly listed, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
And they do actually respond. That's a fun thing that some folks don't. If you call your legislator, you often will actually get them on the phone, which is a great thing about me.
Awesome. All right, now we can get to it. So the first way is coming to the State House. So you can do this in a few different ways. As Josh was mentioning, the State House is really accessible. You can come on an organized action day. So we're going to talk about this a bit later, but NRCM and other organizations that work on environmental issues and beyond organize lobby days or rallies. And there's, throughout the legislative session, plenty of organized ways to be at the State House, where staff can help you find your legislators and give you talking points, tips, help, bring you directly to your legislator. But you also can go on your own. Like, you don't have to go with a structured group. So if you're swinging through Augusta, if you want to take a trip with some of your friends and the lobby day that NRCM is hosting or other groups isn't working for you, you can just go and find your legislator. You're more than welcome to reach out to us, and we can provide you some resources that you might need or guidance. I would say Tuesdays through Thursdays are the best days to stop by. Typically in the morning between 9 to 10 a.m. or around noon would be the best time to catch legislators in the hallways. In between committee sessions, and then also when they're going to be in the House or Senate chambers. If they are in the House or Senate chambers, you can pass a note in, and then often your legislator will come out. So for the Senate's office, there's the someone at the door, the sergeant at arms. You just give him the note, and he can help you pass it to your legislator and ask for them to come out and talk to you. And then if you're trying to talk to your representative, there's a little side office by the chamber for the House. And there's a basket that you put the note in, and it will get delivered to your legislator. Um, so that's a pretty cool thing that we have. Um, if you also see if you don't know where you're going, if you haven't been to the State House before, or try to figure out where your legislator might be, if you see anyone with name tags that looks like a lobbyist, people are usually really friendly about guiding you to where you need to go. And then also anyone that works with an environmental organization, it'll say on their name tag if they're with NRCM, Maine Audubon, Maine Conservation Voters, they will all be so happy to help guide you towards your legislator. So you can ask them, have you seen my legislator? And they can give you the most up-to-date information that they have. Everyone will be so excited that you're there, truly. Um, and it's a pretty neat thing because you can directly, if you see your legislator pass by you in the hallway, you can just go after them in a friendly way. So it's really accessible, and you cannot do that in all states. And so from here, I'm going to pass it to Michael Carnes, who was very active at the legislative session last year for the first time. And I had the great pleasure of getting to work with him a bit. So I'm going to pass it to Michael to talk about, from his perspective, why it matters to come to the State House.
Thanks, Bronya. Can you hear me okay? Is everything coming through?
Yes, we got you.
Great. So about a year ago, I was a total newbie at this sort of thing, and I attended an NRCM event, which was all about lobbying at the State House, and I learned how to do it. Bronya was there; she shepherded me through the process, and it was not nearly as hard as I imagined it would be. I think both Josh and Bronya have talked about like the access that we have in Maine is remarkable. Like you can just walk into the building and then meet your legislator and talk about your concerns. It's something out of a Frank Capra movie. But yeah, I had never done it before. I did it. It was great. One of the really nice things about it is if you're concerned about the environment and concerned about climate, and you see a lot of negative things coming from the federal level, a lot of good and important work can get done at the state level, and you can be a part of it. You can be a unique part of it. One of the things that our legislators can't do is know your perspective or your personal experience on any given bill. And doing this work will let you express that and will make you feel a part of something really good at a time when it might be difficult to do that otherwise. So I would strongly encourage you to pursue in-person action at the State House. It is really great. I don't know how else to say it other than that. But again, yeah, I want to thank Bronya and Josh for doing this. It's been great. I'm going to keep participating, and hopefully more and more as time goes on. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Michael. And yeah, people are always amazed that legislators don't have their own offices with their own staff. In the state of Maine, our elected officials they get a stipend for doing the work, but they're more or less volunteering, and they're average members of the community. They show up to work every day. The only people that have offices are the Senate president and the speaker of the House. Everyone else is accessible and available in the halls. You can approach them directly and communicate directly the things that you're looking to talk to them about. I'll just note too, if you are coming up and you're not joining us for one of our days of action, if it's just a day of the week, please do reach out to your legislator ahead of time and say, hey, I'm going to be in the building, would really love to see you. You can establish a meetup time. If you do hear back from them, that's probably the easiest way to find them. Otherwise, it's kind of, navigating through the third floor and trying to pick out your legislator from a sea of legislators, which is our job and can be done. But, Michael's become a pro at it, but it might take a little bit of practice. So I wanted to note as well, I think this is an overlooked way to get in touch with your representative, but one that we employ really regularly. The State House is the halls of power, and it's a really important place to show up and make your voice heard throughout the legislative process. But your elected officials represent your community, and they will meet with you in your community. This is us sitting down with Senator Nangle. We had 15 folks from the Westbrook-Windham area. Senator Nangle is the chair of the Transportation Committee, and we wanted to talk to him about a bill that we were working on cleaning up our transportation system and providing more funding for public transit and active transportation. So we had a community member reach out. It's always more effective if you reach out from your own community and even say, hey, I have friends that would like to meet with you, or I'm reaching out on behalf of this organization or local community organization, and we'd like to sit down and have a conversation with you. We are happy to help you facilitate this process, but you can do it on your own. You can do it in the home of a constituent. This is the Westbrook Community Center that we established as a low barrier way for folks to come out and meet with their legislator. But especially as we move towards the election season, legislators are looking to meet with community members, and don't pass up on the opportunity to sit down with them. If you do get a positive response from a legislator and they're willing, make sure to go in having an ask and making a plan about how you're going to make that ask, right? It can be a casual conversation, but we want to make sure to walk away with having made an ask of your representative and having gotten a commitment from them. And then you can let us know about that commitment. It's always remarkable how much information we get from our members about the perspective of legislators, which is just all the more helpful for how we can advocate for a bill effectively. And lastly, invite your friends. I mean, this is always a big takeaway, whether you're going to the State House or whether you're doing an in-district meeting. It is all the more impactful if you have more folks from your community talking to your legislator. With that, I'll hand it back to you, Branya.
All right. And just before I move on from how accessible legislators are, and that, you can invite them to meet with you in your own community or find them at the State House. I think another really cool thing in Maine is that for the most part, there are usually only a few degrees of separation between you and your legislator. Like the odds are very high that if you don't know them, you're going to know a lot of the same people. And so I think that that's a pretty unique thing, that there's going to be connection points that you can find. And also, I always encourage folks to figure out if they know of any of those connecting points beforehand, whether you, like for Mike's example, play trivia at the brewery that your legislator owns. Okay, so the fourth thing would be providing testimony during a hearing. So as we mentioned during the short session, there are less hearings, but there are still hearings. So there's a few ways that you can do this. So you can testify in person, and that's always going to be the most impactful way to testify. However, not everyone can make it to Augusta to testify during a hearing, which takes place during work hours, and it's a travel. So there's also the opportunity to testify online. The only thing is you just have to register at least 30 minutes in advance. And I've linked here, and we'll send this out after this workshop, but there's a website. It's just mainelegislator.org/testimony. And so you just sign up for online testimony. And we have some guidance and more steps in our Take Action Toolkit online, which will also be sent out. You also, if the timing doesn't work for you to provide online testimony, you can submit written testimony. And so you just use that same link, mainelegislator.org/testimony, and you can submit your written testimony that will be in the record. And yeah, the Take Action Toolkit has a lot more for direction and tips for developing and delivering compelling testimony and beyond. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so you also can call or email or write a letter to your legislator. So as we talked about before, it's very easy to find your legislator's information, whether it's through NRCM's webpage, and the link that we talked about at the beginning for how to find your legislator, or if you know who your legislator is, if you just Google their name, you'll be able to find their page on the State House website. And so I picked on Senator Scott Searway because I saw a few people from his district were going to be on this call. So as you can see his home phone number. Often legislators will also have their cell phone number. You can see his email. And then also the mailing address of the state house. Some legislators will have their own address as well, but not all. So it's very easy to get in touch with your legislator and find that information. And yeah, it's very accessible. And as was referred to, many legislators rarely hear from people in their district. So calls, emails, they all definitely matter. And legislators often respond. All right, so the next way that you can get in touch with your legislator is writing a letter to the editor. So why does this matter? Because it's, a not often direct outreach to your legislator, but elected officials read the opinion sections in the newspapers. So whether it's the bigger newspapers or more regional newspapers like the Piscataquis Observer. It's a way also of educating your neighbors. And, if you have a letter to the editor published, you can go ahead and email that to your legislator to make sure you flag it for them. We have guidance in our toolkit that's online on how to submit a letter to the editor. So tips, best practices, but also the contact information for newspapers across the state. All right, next one. All right, and then last, this ties into everything that we have just talked about. But for any action that you do, we highly encourage you to invite friends and family to join you in making change. So, if you're going to an action day or rally or a trip to the state house, invite your friends, start a carpool, see if others want to join. Something that you can also do, it can be more fun rather than emailing your legislator by yourself, or if let's say you want to write testimony, to ask a couple of friends or neighbors to come together to do that together. Have some drinks, have some food. It makes it a lot more fun and also helps build that momentum. All right, so call to action. So this legislative session, we have quite a few opportunities for involvement and connecting with your legislator and taking action. So we wanted to make sure that we had a few different avenues for how people can get engaged. So we have a few different opportunities at the State House. So the one that's coming up the soonest is going to be on January 27th, the Make Polluters Pay Day of Action that we're really excited about. Our partners with Maine Youth for Climate Justice are point on that one, but NRCM is helping as well. So we'll be there. We really encourage all of you to be there. February 12th, we're going to have a waste day of action. So a day of action focused on our waste related priorities. So we anticipate the battery stewardship one, but also there are so many other bills that we didn't mention today. So sooner, a few weeks in advance, we're going to have a better idea of what bills will be hot related to waste, but we knew we wanted to carve out time to focus on that. And then we still need to narrow down the date because we have a lot of partners that are really involved in Land for Maine's future. So we want to find the best time for this, but there is going to be a big day of action for Land for Maine's future. If you can't make it to the State House, or if there are people in mind that you think, oh, they're not going to be able to make it to the State House, but you think they could come to something virtually, we've got virtual options for action. So you can see that in the middle of this slide. So on January 29th, as Josh mentioned earlier, there's going to be a legislative priorities webinar. Today, we only gave like a 60-second overview of each of a handful of our priority bills, but that will be a chance where we'll have more of our policy leads. We'll dive deeper into those bills. There's going to be a waste virtual action hour on February 3rd. So if you aren't able to make it to the State House, or if you are going to make it to the State House for that February 12th day of action, but want a little bit more prep in advance, that's the opportunity for you. We're also going to have a virtual action hour for Land for Maine's future, date to be determined very soon. And then April 7th, we blocked out some time for an end of session action hour. That's a time where the session is anticipated to wrap up April 15th. And so we know that there's going to be a lot going on then. So we're viewing that as like the remaining priorities, the things that really need to be addressed that we don't want to slip through the cracks. There's also going to be a few regional days of action. So I believe both Nate and Olivia are on this call. So Olivia is our Franklin County Outreach Coordinator, and then Nate is our Penobscot Bay, Frenchman Bay Outreach Coordinator. And they're organizing some days of action and training opportunities within their regions. So on February 25th, there's going to be an advocacy workshop on Land for Maine's future in the Kingfield area. In February, date still to be determined. Watch out for there being a similar workshop in Farmington and also in Ellsworth. And then on March 21st, there's going to be a snowshoe with NRCM and Maine Hudson Trails and a talk about LMF, Land for Maine's future. So that was a lot of stuff. Josh, can you go to the next slide?
Yes, and don't worry, we do record all of these. We will send out the recording and we'll send out all these dates in a follow-up email. So don't be too stressed about filling your notepad right now.
Yes. So I want to take a little bit of time to talk about if you are planning on attending or hoping to attend any of these opportunities, why? And then also if there's anyone you'd like to bring with you that comes to mind. So I can give everyone a second to think about it, but once you have an answer, if you could raise your hand, that'd be great. Kat.
Hi, everybody. Kat Taylor. I live in Argyle, which is about 20 miles north of Bangor, so I don't get to go to Augusta very often. But what I did was I jotted down a few links that might help people, and I'll put them in the chat. And also, here's a little tech tip. Let's see, where's the chat? Here we go. Another tech tip is when you go up to the upper right-hand corner of the chat window, there's an ellipse, which is those three dots. If you click on those and select Save Chat, it will save the entire chat for you in a folder under your Documents folder in a folder called Zoom. And I find that very helpful. So in order of appearance, you want to sign up for the state alerts. So if you have things that you're interested in, you can go ahead and sign up for those alerts, and then the administrative assistant will send you sponsors updates and amendments and things like that. They'll send you out a schedule and ahead of time. I think the next one was the weekly schedule, where you can click on the link of the committee that you want to follow, and it'll take you to that work session or public hearing for that day. And then the next one is the Maine bill and enacted law text searches is my favorite place to look for bill numbers, because it gives you all of the bills, regardless of what year they were in. You can filter out things, but it's a wonderful place to go. And when you go to the link of the bill you're looking for, there'll be a button called Status. And if you click on Status, that gives you the status of everything, including the committee names of the committee members and their email links. It's like a one-stop shopping. Well, after things have passed out of committee, you can actually read the amendments there, and you can see how the Senate and the House have been voting on things. So if you can't get down to Augusta, this is the next best thing, because you can find out who your legislators are who are on those committees, and if they're local to you, or even if they aren't, they're publicly available for you. And so this is a way that you can kind of keep track of bills that you're interested in following. And one thing I just learned this last year is you can submit testimony after a public hearing, but before the first work session. So sometimes the work sessions can be weeks out. And what I do is, this is my strategy, is I sign up for Zoom. I put a blurb in the little form that they give you, which is brief. And I let them read that while I'm talking, and I don't read my testimony to them, because to me, that seems like you're an eighth grader giving a book report. And what I do is I talk to them and I engage them and I make eye contact with them and I answer their questions. And then when I submit my written testimony, which could be longer, I also include comments about other people's testimony. So this is a great way for you to kind of get engaged and follow up on things and make your voice be heard, and also get to be known by the committee members, because if they know who you are and you are a repeat offender, they get to know you and they start taking what you say seriously.
Thanks so much, Kat. That's
in a
really
great way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really next level insight and intel. We really appreciate it. And having savvy State House interactees on the call is really fantastic. I saw Nola, you had raised your hand as well. Are there any of these dates that will work for you to join us?
Yeah, well, actually, I could potentially do the make polluters pay one, but I was interested in the March one, and I know you don't have a date for that yet, but since I do volunteer with the Maine Master Naturalist, I just do a lot on the public lands and really care about that. So like that just sounds really interesting to me. And I definitely am interested in doing like the virtual one. And I don't know if I'd be able to make it to Ellsworth for a regional one, but that was the one that just spoke to me the soonest. And I think I would love to see, I mean, like, I guess like if there was anyone else in the Maine Master Naturalist program that could come with me, I think that would be cool, but I'd have to like talk to them about that. That was just an idea. I was like, oh yeah, because you guys mentioned carpooling. I was like, oh yeah, that could be fun. We could like all go together and have a little day. But I'll have to pay attention for when you guys have the date for that.
Big
Yeah,
time.
that's great. That's such a good idea to bring the master naturalists. And we should have that date. I'm really hoping for next week.
Yeah,
But we'll make sure to reach out to you in particular once we have that.
awesome. Cool. Thank you.
I think we have time for a couple more. So I saw Richard's hand.
Yeah, a bunch of us in Third Act, Maine, from the 4 hubs all over the state are planning to come on January 27th. I don't know exact numbers, but I think there's a good number of us. I'm in regard to that, I'm wondering, will details of how that day is going to be how it's going to work, will that be sent out by NRCM, or I know there's other people that are sponsoring this, other organizations. Where should we look for details on how that day is going to work?
Yeah, great question. So this is one of the links that I'll include in our follow-up. We are doing a shared action network link for you to sign up. And that's going to go to Maine Youth for Climate Justice, who have been really leading the charge on this. And so then to everyone who has signed up via that link, we will send out details about where to be, how long the duration of the event is going to be, and what the different things are going to be that we're doing throughout the day. I'm really excited for this one because we are going to be printing out some large photos of some of the climate damage that Maine has experienced over the last 5 years, and do kind of a, so to speak, live gallery of some of these photos being held by people so the legislators can really see in real time why we need climate resilience funding. So that's our primary goal, but we will also likely have a press conference and some remarks as well. And those details will be coming to you next week.
Great, thank you.
I'm seeing we're getting close to time, so we have time for one more, and then I'll pass it to Josh to lead us in Q&A. But Lori, I saw your hand.
Thank you. This is a great program, and thanks for all your do. January 27th, Make Polluters Pay Day of Action. I would like to attend that. I am the leader of Citizens Climate Lobby in Mid-Coast, Maine. And of course, we're very concerned about climate action. And I will invite everyone in Mid-Coast, Maine, CCL, and Michael Carnes.
That's brilliant, Lori. Thank you so much. And again, that link will be sent out to everyone afterwards. So do sign up and then send it to some folks that you think might be interested in joining. What do we think? I think I see just one more hand, so we might as well do it, and then we'll do a more general Q&A. So who was Marielle? Put your hand down since.
Yeah, no, thanks, Josh. Hello, everyone. I put it in the chat, but just wanted to mention that our Climate Action Committee from Surfrider, Maine would love to attend the January 27th event. We've got probably 2 or 3 volunteers. I'm sure we could rally a few more too.
Thank you so much. That's really incredible. And I hope to see many of you there. We'll go to questions, and I just do, before we close out, want to put this slide up for a second. This is the best way to keep in touch with us. I have my email as well as Branya's email. If you have any questions about any of these events or anything after the call that we don't get a chance to get to in the Q&A here shortly, please do reach out. There are a lot of other ways to contact us as well. And I do here just want to make a pitch. We really can't do the work that we do without all of you. And that's true both in terms of your showing up, contacting legislators, getting in touch with elected officials. We're also a membership-based organization, so we are literally funded by our membership. If you are not yet an NRCM member, I do encourage you to sign up to be a member with us, and I will include information about how to do that in the follow-up email as well. There's going to be a lot of information in that follow-up email, so keep your eyes peeled for that. With that, I'm going to stop the share so that we can all see each other. I'd encourage folks to come on camera if you're in a position to do so, so that we can see each other's faces. And we'll do some questions and answers before we close out here at 1. So Richard, kick us off.
Yeah, thank you. I wondered the balcony solar bill that I didn't see on the priorities for, and I just wondering is that something NRCM is also going to be working on, and what's the plan for that? I know that public testimony already opened on January 6th, but I'm wondering what NRCM's plan is for the balcony solar bill.
Yeah, big time. We're really excited about this bill. And just to give some context for others, this is a bill that would allow individuals to purchase small solar arrays and plug them directly into a wall outlet at their home to help offset cost and energy usage. Germany is well ahead of us in this and have been doing it for the past couple of years and have produced an incredible amount of energy with really small scale localized solar. Right now, you're not allowed to do that because of the way that our utility structure is. So this bill would enable people to go ahead and purchase their own small solar that they can plug directly into their outlets, which I think is just a really phenomenal idea. That was an example of a public hearing that happened really quickly at the beginning of the session. It actually happened a day before the technical start of the session. So we were there. Rebecca gave really compelling testimony. There are a few tweaks to be made to ensure that it works best for Maine. But it is going to emerge from committee. If you'll remember the legislative process, it had its public hearing. It'll have a work session. At that work session, a few of those amendments that were recommended by us and others at the public hearing will be made, and then each of the members of the committee will vote. So between now and the work session, you can reach out to members of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee and encourage them to pass this bill. But then after we presumably pass the bill out of the Energy, Utility, and Technologies Committee, it'll go to the House and the Senate, and we will likely send out an action alert encouraging people to advocate for that bill. And I don't want to take up too much more time, but I do just want to say the Environmental Priorities Coalition, of which we're a part, which is the 30 some odd largest environmental organizations in the state, have selected this as an environmental priority for this session. So it does have a lot of focus from the environmental community, which is great. Marielle.
Thanks, Josh. I just wanted to ask real quick if you had any interesting updates or details on the Climate Superfund bill.
Yes, so the update there is that we have a work session next week on the 14th. Again, we anticipate some minor changes being made. The advantage of having a carryover bill is that we have been able to work as a coalition from last session to this session to continue reaching out to legislators and advocating for Climate Superfund. Since that time, for example, the city of Bath, the city of Rockland, and the city of Yarmouth have all passed municipal resolutions in support of that bill, which is just really important, particularly because the chair of the Environment and Natural Resources Committee, where this is going to be worked, represents Bath. So we had the city of Bath reach out to the chair of the ENR committee and say, please prioritize this. We anticipate a couple small language changes incorporating MOCA, the Maine Office of Community Affairs, to help with distributing some of the funding. But do reach out to members of the ENR committee, encouraging their support of the bill, after which we will again be advocating really hard for this bill on the House and Senate floor. The public hearing for the bill happened already last session, so there is not an opportunity for public engagement in front of the committee.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure thing. I think we have time for one and maybe two questions. Any other curiosities out there? Feel free to just come off mute. Kat, go for it.
I just wanted to point out, I sent you the email, Josh, that the comment period for the Energy Coach pilot program is going to be due by the 22nd of this month. And I sent you a link and everything for that. This is where we can actually give input on how we can set up a program for people to give ratepayers advice on what they would need, to electrify their house, how they could best go about it, any kinds of incentives and rebates and just navigating the landscape. So if you're interested in this, this is a great time to add your voice to that. I anticipate this being mostly a volunteer program, and I'd love to see groups like the Clean Energy Team for Sierra Club, which I'm a member of, and NRCM energy teams, especially getting out there and offering their expertise and their vast knowledge in these fields, to help develop something ahead of time rather than trying to fix it later on.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kat. And if there's a link you want to put in the chat now, feel free to do that.
Yeah,
I
I can do
anticipate
that.
this could be a good focus of ours at a future climate action call after the legislative session wraps up, so that we can get some hands-on, how do you actually go about electrifying your home and who in your community can help you with some of those decisions. Well, that's been a packed hour, folks. I really appreciate you all for tuning in. This has been recorded, so you can send it to anyone who wasn't able to make it. Again, we'll send it out to the full climate action call list. We really look forward to seeing you throughout the course of this legislative session, hopefully in person at the State House or in a community meeting with your legislator, but really any way that you can reach out to legislators in support of the things that you care about matters. So thank you for tuning in, and thank you for your continued engagement, and Happy New Year all. See you soon.